credit felt like a very important test, and no one had taught me how to study for it.
Yeah.
And so when I applied and I got rejected, I said, had I known, I would have been building my credit, and I just didn't.
Just want to talk more about that. So when you were creating cards for Visa, what things were you considering to like entice high earners into, applying for these cards? And then was it kind of just left unsaid that these like millennials that you were trying to entice were just men, right? They were just straight white men.
So the way that we were thinking about building out the Chase Sapphire Reserve was a product that was similar to the success of the Amex Platinum,
Yeah.
but with a little bit more around a young urban millennial lifestyle. And the
A
idea
little more accessible.
exactly,
probably.
yeah, and slightly more accessible. And so the idea was that we could actually create this kind of black card, Centurion card experience for a younger population. And
Yeah.
that actually would have, the lounge access that we all like, right? It would have one thing that's really interesting about the Chase Sapphire Reserve is that the value actually doesn't necessarily come from the cashback rewards, right? It comes a lot from the different
the perks or the benefits.
The perks and the benefits, exactly.
Totally.
And so, really creating this card that felt aspirational and, really elevated you as this young professional traveler was the idea behind it. And actually, a fun fact is even everything was meant to feel very aspirational and premium. So even the weight of the card.
That was the first weighted card I'd ever gotten.
Yeah.
So for those of you who don't know, with credit cards, right, is like typically it's just plastic, right? You have plastic with some numbers on the card. But with the Reserve, that was the first card. And then I now have the Amex Platinum. But that was the first card where it actually, like, you set it down on the table to pay, right? And you hear an audible, like
that clink,
literally, and it makes you feel powerful, and you're like, oh my gosh, who am I? Like, this is the height of luxury. So I imagine it was 100%, of course, like a decision that was like very intentional.
Yeah. So we actually, in the Visa rules that I helped write, we would say the weight that it needed to be and the types of material that it would be. And it was actually interesting because this is a travel card. And so it would sometimes beep in the metal detector. So during our tests, we would have to make sure that the metal that we used wasn't beeping in a metal detector.
Oh, shit you don't think about.
Exactly.
Funny.
Yeah. So, I mean, it was a really interesting experience. And I think the important distinction to make with women in credit and the industry was, up until 1974.
You could not have a credit card in your own name.
Exactly. Women could be rejected from a credit card without a male cosigner.
Yep.
And for business loans, that was until 1988, which was, I was thought of to be in this world at that point.
Right.
And so, since then, after 1974, RBG's work with the ACLU made it illegal, right, to say if woman, then. However, what we're seeing with the credit industry today is that because the system truly was never designed to center women or let's just say center
any marginalized group.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Any marginalized group. The downstream impacts are there, right? You think about end to end, you think about credit scoring and how that reflects systemic bias, which is, a whole conversation. You also think about the way that advertising is working is that banks are advertising to men 13 times more than they're advertising to the rest of these groups.
Which, can I pause you there?
Yeah.
Okay, so they're advertising 13% more to men.
13 times
13
more.
times. Oh, 13 times.
13 times. Yeah.
But women hold the majority of the buying power.
Exactly. Yeah. And I'm sure you know the stat, but by the end of this decade, women are slated to hold 75% of discretionary spend.
So is that because they're not stupid people, obviously, that are running these. So where's the disconnect? Is it the bias? Is it the bias? Is it the expectation that the man in a heteronormative relationship is owning the financial decisions? Like, what? I'm sure it's an onion layered problem, right? You start peeling back onion layers, but like, what do you see as the disconnect there?
So there are multiple pieces. I think the first one is that men traditionally are the financial or have been the decision makers of the household. And so what we see actually is that women are twice as likely to be authorized users on a parent or on a partner's card. And so it's these men that are getting the products, whether that is because they actually can qualify for them or it's because,
they're the ones actually being marketed too.
Exactly. So there's so much around that. And then women end up being the ones making the purchasing decisions, but as these authorized users, which, brings the problem full circle where women are actually building credit for their male counterparts and earning rewards for their male counterparts, right? So that's the second piece is kind of this marketing, understanding issue. The third piece is education. One of the things that we saw was that women are half as likely to have received an education on credit by the time they reach high school.
Yep.
And we all know that we're not taught about credit in school. We don't know where to learn about it. And so there's this education gap that never really closes. So that's the third piece of this onion layer is that if you don't know the rules of the game, you don't want to play.
Right.
So that's kind of the third piece. And the last piece is actually the rewards. They are much more catered towards where men are spending most of the time. So if you look at these travel rewards cards that, again, I was building at Visa, they are rewarding where these male-dominated categories like dining, like travel, and again, I love to travel as much as the other person, but what we're seeing is that women are spending significantly more in fundamentally different categories like retail, household goods, pharmacies, beauty, all of those categories we're spending a lot in, and that's not being rewarded on traditional products today.
Yeah.
So it's kind of this slew of marketing, education, legacy, rewards, and it turns into this kind of just whole system that truly does not center a population that, to your point, holds the spending power in this country.
Yeah.
What has been really inspirational for me is, seeing young women who are coming into the workforce at greater rates than ever before, right?
Yeah.
And having incomes higher than ever before and
being
really
more college educated and
Exactly. And really saying that we want to know and we don't want those things to be true. So I think the intention is there. And of course, everything that you're doing here proves that, right? This group of financial feminists who are just like, I want to know and I want to be able to play, right? I want to learn the rules. And so I think the industry hasn't really caught up with that in creating products and services that are actually centering women. And I think a lot of that is also because the financial services industry is so male dominated, right? You don't see as many women as we would like to that look like you and me. So, there's so much work to be done, but I think we are on an upward swing.
Yeah, and the stat that I think about all the time, which is the one you cited of like credit card couldn't have one in your own name till 1974. My mom was born in, 1962. She was in middle school by that time. It's not that long ago that there was this huge gap. And yet we wonder, like, why aren't women, able to take advantage of these things? And why aren't women able to build credit? And then we remember all of these statistics of like, basically yesterday, women didn't have the opportunity to do any of these things.
Exactly. Yeah. There was actually an interesting interview that I heard from Hillary Clinton, and she was saying that, even after this law was passed, she still experienced discrimination when it came to getting a credit card. And they had asked her to have Bill as a co-signer, and she said,
"Can you imagine?
I make more money than him."
Like, I'm sorry, do you know who I am?
I know. So, yes, there is a certain thing as, laws being passed, but I think history time and time again has showed that that's not enough, right? There needs to be so much more that needs to be done.
Right.